Chapter 4. Breath of the Forgotten Sky. The village remained restless long after the council meeting. The flames of the ancestor tree's ceremonial torches crackled against the damp night air, casting shifting shadows across the earthen paths. People spoke in hushed tones, their eyes flicking toward the boy as if he were a storm coiled in human form. Dolo stood near the central fire, arms crossed, watching the nervous energy ripple through the crowd. The earth beneath his feet whispered faintly, a vibration that had not been there before. A pulse, steady, like a slow drum beat, woven through the soil like a secret heartbeat. He tried to ignore it, but the sensation persisted. Across the clearing, Mako leaned against a wooden post, his jaw tight, his eyes locked on the boy. Suspicion hardened his face. The boy sat alone by the fire, wrapped in the cloak Dolo had given him. His eyes, dimmed from their earlier glow, stared into the flames with quiet intensity. He didn't look frightened. He didn't even seem concerned about the wary glances the villagers gave him. He just was. Dolo. He turned to find Elder Waya standing beside him. The scent of sage and earth clung to her, and her gnarled staff bore new cracks along its spiraling length. Her eyes, dark, ancient, knowing, shifted toward the boy. "He unsettles them," Dolo said quietly. "As well he should," Waya replied. Her voice was soft but unyielding. "Mana has not touched this world for generations. The earth has grown accustomed to silence. Now it awakens, and with it, fear returns." Dolo swallowed. "I feel it. The ground. It hums beneath me. It speaks." She laid a hand on his shoulder. "It is not speaking to you," she said. "It is singing. Mana moves again, and when it moves, the world remembers." He glanced at the boy. "But why him? Why now?" The old seer's lips tightened. "That is the question I mean to answer tonight." She stepped toward the boy. Dolo followed. The boy's eyes lifted as they approached. He straightened slightly, his small fingers still twined around the edges of the cloak. His pupils reflected the firelight like molten gold. Elder Waya lowered herself onto the log beside him. The firelight cast deep lines across her face. "Do you remember anything more, child?" The boy hesitated. His gaze dipped to the flames. "Only the tree," he said, "and the falling." "The world tree?" she asked softly. He nodded. "It held me. I saw its branches stretching through the sky, through everything. The roots wrapped around the stars." His brow furrowed. "But then something called me. A crack, a sound, and I fell." Elder Waya's fingers tightened around her staff. "The seal," she whispered. "What seal?" Dolo asked. The old woman exhaled slowly and rose to her feet. "Come," she said. "It is time you knew the truth." They walked to the base of the ancestor tree, where thick roots the size of houses twisted like petrified serpents. Waya knelt and placed her hand against the bark. The wood shimmered faintly beneath her palm. The tree responded. The bark shifted, groaning like waking stone. A seam appeared in the trunk, spiraling upward like an ancient scar. The center of the seam cracked open, revealing a hollow interior. Dolo stared. The tree had always been sacred, but he had never seen this. Waya stepped inside without hesitation. Dolo followed with the boy close behind. The walls of the hollow pulsed with veins of pale green light. The air thickened, warm and damp with the scent of moss and rain. At the center of the hollow stood a stone pedestal, worn smooth by time. Upon it lay a disk of polished obsidian, etched with a spiraling symbol. The world tree encircled by a serpent, devouring its tail. Waya placed both hands on the stone. "This is the stone of remembrance," she said. It was left to us after the cataclysm. Through it, we remember the truth of Mana's fall. The stone shuddered beneath her touch. The green veins along the walls glowed brighter. The air thickened until it hummed against Dolo's skin. The pedestal vibrated, the symbol on the stones spinning like a whirlpool. The hollow dissolved, and the past came alive. The warmth of the tree vanished. Dolo stood with Waya and the boy in an endless expanse of ashen wasteland. The sky loomed heavy and black overhead, churned by storms that raged without wind. The ground beneath them was scorched and cracked, littered with skeletal remains of forests. Mountains lay crumbled like broken monuments, their peaks shattered. The air reverberated with silence, a silence so deep it pressed into Dolo's skull. "This," Waya said, voice heavy, "is what the world became when Mana vanished." Dolo tried to breathe through the thick, acrid air. The boy gripped his arm, eyes wide. The land stretched endlessly in all directions, dead and hollow. "What happened?" Dolo asked. The space around them shifted. The wasteland darkened. From the earth, black mist coiled upward. The mist formed shapes, people, their bodies twisted and gaunt. They wore ancient tribal garments, their faces contorted in rage and sorrow. "The cataclysm," Waya said softly. "Long ago, mana flowed through the land as freely as the wind. The tribes lived in harmony with it. But mana is power, and power tempts." The shadows moved, acting out her words. Dolo saw two figures locked in battle, one wielding a spear wreathed in silver flame, the other cloaked in shadow, his hands summoning writhing tendrils of black mana. The tribes fought over mana's use. Some wished to preserve its balance, others sought to master it. The figure cloaked in shadow raised both arms. The world split open beneath his feet. The ground cracked, forests ignited, mountains shattered. The tree of mana trembled. Dolo recognized the shadowed figure. His cloak bore the same markings the shadow tribes now wore. "Who was he?" Dolo asked. "His name is lost," Waya said. "He was the first of the Shadowborn, the one who taught his followers how to twist mana into umbrum, shadow energy. They sought to control life, death, and the very forces of the world." The vision shifted again. The world tree appeared in the distance, its branches crackling with blue-white energy. The shadowed figure directed the streams of dark mana toward the tree's roots. And so the spirits of the earth intervened. They sealed the flow of mana, severing its connection to the world. The world tree became dormant, and without mana, the world withered. Dolo watched as the glowing veins of the world tree dimmed and turned gray. The landscape around them cracked and crumbled beneath storms and decay. The world had nearly died to stop mana's misuse. "But mana has returned," Waya continued, "and it has returned through him." She turned toward the boy. The boy flinched under her gaze. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. "It is not your fault, child," Waya said gently. "You are the first avatar. The world's natural cycle has chosen you to restore balance." Dolo's thoughts spun. The avatar of mana. A figure of legend, reborn after untold generations, a child born from the heart of the world tree itself. But if mana had returned naturally, why had the world tree cracked? The vision shifted once more. The world tree's base appeared, and there, deep within its roots, a jagged glowing wound pulsed with dark crimson light. "That," Waya said, voice trembling, "should not be there." The wound bled shadowy tendrils that coiled toward the surface. Awaken had left his mark. Dolo's breath quickened. "What does it mean?" "It means," Waya said, gripping her staff tightly, "that the Shadowborn were not destroyed in the cataclysm. They survived in the veil. and they want mana back. The boy's hand tightened on Dolo's arm. The vision trembled. The ashen wasteland cracked. The black mist surged toward them. The boy gasped. "I remember," the boy whispered. The mist froze. Dolo turned toward him. "Aros?" The boy's eyes flared gold. He stared into the mist as though recognizing an old enemy. His lips moved again, voice trembling. "My name is Aros." The mist recoiled from the word like a wounded beast. The shadows twisted and collapsed, sucked into the cracked earth. The world tree surged with light. The hollow reformed around them. The pedestal stood quiet once more. The green veins along the walls dimmed to a soft glow. Aros slumped forward, breathing hard. Waya knelt beside him, laying her hand on his chest. Her eyes softened. "Aros," she murmured, "the name of the beacon." "The beacon?" Dolo asked. "It comes from the ancient tongue," Waya said. "Aros means light that guides. It is the name given to the avatar who would restore the balance lost in the cataclysm." The boy shuddered. "I don't know how." "You don't need to know yet," she said softly. "The world called your name. You remembered. That is the first step." Aros clutched Dolo's hand as though anchoring himself to reality. His small fingers trembled. The world tree whispered softly from the roots. "The first avatar has remembered. The light returns, but the shadow follows." The warmth in the ground turned cold. A distant, rumbling voice echoed from the earth's depths. "We see you now, Aros, and we are coming." The three of them stood in silence as the warning faded. The hollow walls seemed to breathe with uneasy tension. Waya gripped her staff. "The shadow tribes know. The war begins anew." The boy's name had been remembered, his purpose revealed, and now the enemy knew exactly where to find him.